Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
The NHS is the victim of a major cyber attack. Since mid-afternoon, computer systems in at least 25 hospital trusts and GP surgeries up and down England and in Scotland have been hit. In those affected, routine operations are being cancelled, patients are being sent home and ambulances diverted. Patients are being asked to stay away unless their condition is life-threatening. The cyber attack is a form of ransomware in which an IT system is hacked into and will only be restored on payment of a ransom. Hospital staff have been venting their frustration on social media, saying they have no access to patient records, blood tests, even their bleeps are affected. The scale of the cyber attack on the NHS is unprecedented. It's been declared a major national incident, disrupting hospitals and trusts from Glasgow, Dumfries and Carlisle, Blackpool and York to some of the big teaching hospitals in London and services in the south of England. Our first report tonight is from our health editor, Hugh Pym.
A major incident's been declared by NHS leaders in England, and hospitals like this one in Colchester have been experiencing serious computer problems after a cyber attack. This is what some patients told us.
The gentleman just inside the door said that all the computers have gone down, and we're not sure whether the doctors can see you for whatever reason. If it's x-rays or breakages or whatever, they're going to send you home.
It's happened before. At this hospital trust covering North Lincolnshire and Goole, IT systems were closed for 3 days as a result of a cyber attack last autumn. Hundreds of operations and patient appointments were postponed. People were told to go to A&E only if it was really necessary. There were warnings then that NHS IT was vulnerable. And today, staff logging in at some other hospitals found this on their screens, with a message saying your files are encrypted. If you want to recover them, you need to pay up. Ransomware, a hidden program used by criminal hackers, was being used.
The NHS is vulnerable because typically it hasn't invested enough in computer security. They're using old computers, old systems, and if they don't keep them properly patched, they will keep on getting hit by attacks like this.
In a statement, NHS Digital, responsible for IT, said a number of NHS organisations have reported that they've been affected by a ransomware attack. This attack was not specifically targeted at the NHS and is affecting organisations from across a range of sectors. At this stage, we don't have any evidence that patient data has been accessed. One doctor at this hospital in Mansfield told us how it was affecting services today.
I had a lady today who had a severe back pain, which we call possibility of coda equina, which potentially could paralyze her down below her leg. And we had to divert her to other hospital, Queen's Medical Centre, for further management. It's getting a bit difficult for us because we've got a lot of patients here, and it takes an awful lot of time for us to process the information on a paper system.
Some hospitals warned local people they were experiencing significant IT and telephone problems. Some GP practices have also reported significant problems. Hugh Pym, BBC News.
Well, let's speak to our correspondents at some of the affected hospitals. Helena Lee is at Barts in London and Kevin Birch is in Colchester. Helena, first of all to you, what's happening there?
Cyber attack. Now, they've activated what they call a major incident plan here for the welfare and safety of their patients. Now, all routine appointments have been cancelled. Patients have been told to use other NHS services if they can, and any ambulances arriving here have been diverted to neighbouring hospitals. And we've just spoken to one patient, a man. He's been waiting for months for a complex heart operation. He said he was all prepared for surgery, about to go into theatre, when doctors told him at the very last minute that it had to be cancelled.
Yeah, well, this is Colchester General. This hospital treats more than 500,000 people a year, so the potential here, as elsewhere, for disruption was huge. But having been inside, spoken to staff and patients, it seems to be measured and calm in the the words of one member of staff, it's been tough but manageable. One of the patients, you heard him in Hugh's report there, he said to me that there had been a few moans and groans, but most people have been understanding when they were told they'd be sent home. But a couple of other patients saying they're yet to be convinced on this claim that patient data hasn't been in some way compromised. Now, this hospital works very closely with the hospital 19 miles up the road here in Ipswich. They share a chief executive, but it's a sign of the patchwork nature of this that this one was affected, that one wasn't. Elsewhere across this patch, Broomfield Hospital in Chelmsford was hit, the Lister at Stevenage, the James Paget Hospital at Gorleston in Norfolk, but others unaffected. One of those was Addenbrooke's, which is the biggest hospital in this region.
Kevin Birch in Colchester, thank you. Well, let's talk to our technology correspondent, Rory Cleveland-Jones. So, Rory, what more can you tell us about this ransomware? And we're hearing stories about not just the NHS being affected, but companies across Europe.
Yeah, this ransomware has become the most dangerous and the most important weapon in the arm in the hands of cyber criminals. There's a lot of concern about it. We've seen attacks over the last couple of years around the world, including some previous attacks on NHS hospitals. This is by far the biggest we've seen. And the NHS is stressing that it wasn't specifically targeted. That's what it's saying. This is a wider attack. And I'm certainly seeing evidence of that. One security researcher saying 36,000 detections of WannaCry, which is another variant of this type of software, ransomware, so far. Russia, Ukraine and Taiwan leading. This is huge. So we're seeing reports from many places across the world, in Spain in particular, about this, the use of this software.
Okay, Rory, thank you.
From Dumfries and Galloway to Colchester in Essex, hospitals and NHS trusts across the country have been thrown into chaos by a massive cyber hack. Computer and phone systems went down, scrambling patient data and forcing many hospitals to divert ambulances and turn people away. The ransomware virus locks computer screens, posting a demand for payment instead. The NHS and the National Cyber Security Centre are desperate to ensure that patient safety isn't affected. In our first report tonight, our health and social care correspondent, Victoria MacDonald.
A sign that something was wrong. Patients turned away from Bart's Hospital. And this from a Hertfordshire trust. Significant problems with their IT and telephone network. At 3:30 p.m, the NHS was hit by a ransomware attack. Possibly as many as 40 organisations are affected. Oops, the notice said, your files have been encrypted. It is a malware attack, a virus unlike the NHS has seen, an opportunistic phishing expedition. The impact was immediate. The Royal London NHS Trust declared a major incident. Ambulances were diverted. They said it was to make sure they could maintain the safety and welfare of their patients.
What did Mummy buy you at the hospital after we got sent away?
Crisps.
Crisps, yeah.
This son and his mother were turned away from the Trust's Whipps Cross Hospital in East London.
And when we turned up, they said, we've got terrible news, unfortunately, you're going to have to be sent away because all of the computer systems are down due to a virus and we can't access any of his files.
Hospitals and doctors' surgeries in London, Blackburn, Nottingham, Cumbria and Hertfordshire among those affected by the hack. In Scotland, 3 GP surgeries were said to have been hit. United Lincolnshire Hospitals NHS Trust sent out a notice saying it was cancelling some weekend appointments because of the attack, which had affected its 3 hospitals. This afternoon, this statement. NHS Digital is working closely with the National Cyber Security Centre, the Department of Health and NHS England to support affected organisations and ensure patient safety is protected. Our focus is on supporting organisations to manage the incident swiftly and decisively, but we will continue to communicate with NHS colleagues and will share more information as it becomes available. But by this evening, it remained unclear how long it would take to cure the NHS of this particular virus.
Well, hospitals and NHS trusts across the country have been affected. Our North of England correspondent Kieran Jenkins is in Blackpool, where hospitals have been turning patients away. Kieran, how is the situation now?
Well, accidents and emergency, of course, usually one of the busiest departments in a hospital, but this is much quieter than you'd expect normally on a Friday evening here at Blackpool, Victoria. They confirmed earlier that they were having computer issues and asked people not to attend A&E here unless in an emergency. It is still open, ambulances are still pulling up, but inside the waiting room is virtually empty. So clearly this ransomware attack is having an effect and people are getting the message to stay away. What is not clear yet, here at least, is how far-reaching the effect of the ransomware attack has been on other processes inside the hospital, because of course almost everything a hospital does these days is computerized, and the picture that we're getting from elsewhere, has to be said, is not promising. We've been speaking to GPs throughout the northwest this evening. One of those described to us how early this afternoon their computer screen simply froze, a message popped up demanding a ransom, and they've not been able to gain access to those computer systems since. And what they said to us was they don't have an electronic backup and they don't have a paper backup, and so there's not much they can do. And more worrying perhaps is they're not entirely sure whether they will ever see that data again.
Kieran, thanks very much. And Matt.
Thanks. Now, well, it seems that the malware the hackers used was a sophisticated virus called WannaDecryptor. It shuts down files on a victim's computer and then tries to blackmail them in exchange for restoring access to their files. Siobhan Kennedy explains all.
The massive IT attack that hit the NHS today was caused by a software virus known as ransomware. The virus is typically spread in so-called phishing emails that are sent to a computer and invite the user to click on a link. Once opened, the virus attacks the system, encrypting files and shutting it down.
This is what we call ransomware. It's a piece of malicious software or malware which is very easy to infect computers and desktops. It's very easy to download a rogue email, open this attachment which executes and spreads and locks down either files or the entire desktop.
Where the email is sent to hundreds or even thousands of staff at the same time, the virus can literally wreak havoc in minutes. We now know the culprit of today's attack is a piece of ransomware called WannaCry. Once the computer is taken over, a message then appears on screen demanding payment to unlock access to the system. The virus was reportedly discovered earlier today by an IT security researcher known as Malware Hunter, who said it came out of nowhere and spread like wildfire. Spain is the hardest hit of IT networks around the world. Telefonica, the country's main telecoms provider, said it had suffered a cybersecurity incident. Here, NHS Digital admitted it was a victim of a ransomware attack but gave no details. Because it doesn't operate one single unified IT system, it's hard to know how the virus got in. But we do know this is the largest computer attack of the NHS to date, hitting reportedly 40 trusts.
And in the last few moments, the Prime Minister, Theresa May, has said that the large-scale cyber hit on the NHS is part of a wider international attack, and there is no evidence that patient data has been compromised in any way. Well, joining me now is Chris Hobson, the CEO of NHS Providers, which represents NHS Trusts. Thanks for coming on the programme, Chris. So Theresa May has said it is an international event. We know that countries like, I think, Turkey, China, Taiwan, even Russia have been affected by this. But we also know that there was a cyber attack of some sort on one of your hospitals in London, St Bart's, a few months ago. The head of digital operations in the NHS has warned that we should be more prepared about these sort of attacks. Why weren't we?
Well, so I think you've put it very well, which is that this is clearly an international attack on a number of different institutions. And as you said, the malware hunter described it as suddenly arriving out of nowhere and spreading very, very quickly. So this isn't about a story about the failures of NHS IT. This is the story, it seems to us, of in the modern world, cybersecurity is a really important issue.
But we were warned about this happening in the NHS, and there was a case on a much lower level a few months ago. So what can be done to protect us from this sort of attack?
So we know that numbers of institutions, be they private companies, be they the NHS, have been subject to these malware attacks. And certainly when we talk to our chairs and chief executives that we represent, it's very clear to us that they regard this as a very, very significant risk, and they've been investing accordingly. The problem, as you've heard, is the inability to for whole range of institutions to keep up with the speed with which the threat mutates.
So, very importantly, when's it going to go back to normal?
Well, so talking to the trusts that have been affected, what they're doing is exactly as you'd expect, and I think maybe it's really worth saying this really clearly. When something like this happens, there is a very well-worked and very well-rehearsed set of contingency plans that kick in. An NHS a silver commander in each place will be responsible for identifying what the threat is, for ensuring that patient safety is not compromised, and for ensuring that we get back to normal as quickly as possible.
Were any lives put at risk as a result of this?
I think you can't say that at this point, given where we
possible,
were.
then?
Well, no, again, I don't want to say it's possible either. What I will say very clearly is that these have happened in the past on individual trusts, and when you look at the individual trusts, what happens is, straight away, there's a very well-rehearsed, there is a very well-thought-through plan that kicks in immediately, and everything is done to protect patients. And the trusts that we've talked to have said they've triggered their emergency plans, they've ensured that they can do the best that they can. But again, as you've heard from the lady with a small child, we have had, in the trust affected, we've had to say to some patients, sorry, we can't do what we would have liked.
How long will it take for us to get back to normal?
I think it's too early to tell. I mean, certainly in the previous kind of malware attacks that we've had, it's tended to take 4 or 5 days. Can I just say what one other thing that's happened is
4 or 5 days is quite a long time, isn't it?
Yeah, but don't forget, those hospitals are continuing to run. Again, as you've heard.
But they're turning patients away.
But what they will have to do is they will have to make do and mend, and clearly, you know, they will be doing everything they can to make sure that happens. The other thing to just say is that, again, talking to a number of our members this afternoon, what they've done is, it seems to me quite rightly, is they've effectively turned their computer systems off so that they can check whether there is malware present, and they will clearly be back up, hopefully, a lot quicker.
OK. Chris Hobson, thanks very much indeed.
I've been getting away with it all.